Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all having an amazing week. Today I wanted to talk about Nick Fuentes, the leader of the Groypers, the guy who famously had a dinner with Kanye during his Nazi era, and professional basement dweller. He had a vision for 2028 that I saw on Twitter earlier today that really just made me laugh. His vision is Caesar. He wants a literal Caesar figure, a Hitler figure, to do a hostile takeover of the Republican Party and basically run the country as a dictator. That is what he's out here publicly asking for and what he thinks will save the GOP in 2028. Here, just take a look at this clip.
Mad Dog America sent $20. Hypothetically, if the community raised enough money to start an America First Party, would you be supportive of Thomas Massie as our nominee? Do you think he'd be a good pick for that position?
No, 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 no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. We need a hostile takeover of the GOP. This whole third party thing, do you know how much money it costs to get on the ballot for a third party? Like millions of dollars. Many millions of dollars to get ballot access. It's not a walk in the park, and I've always been very skeptical of third party. And even the Thomas Massie thing, I like him, but he's not the guy. I don't want to do some nicky-knack protest candidate. I want fucking Hitler. I want Caesar in the flesh, okay? I want something real that is actually going to take us across the Rubicon. I don't want no offense, some nerd who is like a libertarian and whatever. That guy's not presidential. And I like him, but he's clearly not Caesar. I want Caesar. I want Napoleon. I want Alexander. I'm not settling for anything less. And I want a Republican. If Trump could do it, someone else could do it. We don't need a third party. And I don't like the third
Based
party.
Crusader sent $20.
And wow, the second time is even better. And okay. I need you to understand how funny this is because Nick Fuentes and his white Catholic nationalist neo-Nazi fan base have decided that Julius Caesar is their guy. That's who they idolize as their patron saint of based politics. And I genuinely cannot tell if they have just never read a history book in their lives or if they read one and just blacked out every single part of it that didn't fit their like little fantasy that they strive for. Because here's the thing. Let's just say it happened, right? A little thought experiment, if you will. If Julius Caesar actually showed up in America as an eligible candidate for 2028, as the president in 2028, Nick Fuentes and his far-right weirdos would hate his guts. The Groypers would be in legitimate shambles. The whole far-right would lose their fucking minds. And the people who would actually be tempted, and I'm going to be honest about this, it would be us. It would be the progressive left. And this is exactly why it makes this particular clip so funny to me and why I thought it would be interesting to talk about today. So first, you have to understand who Caesar actually was politically. The right has a completely made-up version of him in their heads. Caesar was not a conservative. He was not a traditionalist by any means. He was a leader of the populares. I don't know how to say that word. It was the Roman political faction that fought for working people against the ultra-wealthy landloading class called the optimates. Was that for the land owning and the poor people's best interests? Debatable. But the optimates were basically the Roman version of the billionaire donor class, the ultra wealthy elite that everyone since the dawn of time has hated. Caesar spent his entire life and career making those people's lives a living hell, which is ultimately why they stabbed him 23 times and killed him. The ruling class for hundreds of years has always had one answer for a guy who threatens their money, after all. Anyways, here's where it gets uncomfortable for some of us on the left thinking about Caesar, famous dictator of the past. If Caesar ran in 2028 on his actual policy record, a lot of progressive voters would be nodding along, myself included. Some of them were enthusiastic comrades in our coalition, might even start making excuses for some of his other stuff. Let's just talk about why. So Caesar would first cancel medical debt, not as a little campaign promise, but as a direct executive action targeting the collection agencies and the banks. And this is something that he did as a dictator in 49 BC. Julius Caesar implemented major debt relief to stabilize the Roman economy after the Civil War. He canceled all interest payments accrued since the war start, permitted tenants 1 year, 1 year rent-free living, and mandated that all previously paid interest be deducted from the principal debt. So, overnight, you would have millions of working class Americans having hundreds of extra dollars a month. The Supreme Court would obviously call it unconstitutional, but do you think Caesar cares? No. And honestly, the people whose debt just got wiped aren't going to be too mad about it either. He would then build infrastructure, not a watered down infrastructure bill where the money disappears into the pockets of randoms and corrupt losers and contractors, but he would employ a federal workforce, think a civilian conservation corps by FDR on steroids. He'd build nuclear plants, high speed rail coast to coast, and public housing. But he would do this with nothing but federalized workers who are all on federal pensions, all on federal health care. So you'd have millions of blue collar people with a guaranteed good job and benefits, all tied directly to Caesar staying in power. You want to cut government spending? Well, you're fighting millions of workers whose entire livelihood is now the state. Good luck. We're talking nationwide rent caps, taxing AI companies into the ground to fund human labor, nationalizing the power grid in the name of national security, a broad, fast path to citizenship for millions of undocumented people, not out of the goodness of his heart, but because these citizens are loyal voters. Caesar understood that enfranchising people is how you build an unbreakable base. And again, none of this should be shocking. All of them could read about it if they chose to. He launched a massive state-funded public works projects all the time, like the building of Forum of Caesar, specifically to guarantee employment for the urban working class. He forced the elite to give up massive tracts of public land, which he then redistributed to tens of thousands of urban, poor, and his military veterans. He stabilized the Coronone, the state-subsidized grain dole that kept the Roman poor from starving. And he implemented sweeping debt reconstructions that bailed out the middle and lower classes while forcing wealthy creditors to take losses, and more. So, you see what I mean? Reading that list as a progressive is like, okay, yeah, I actually want all of that. The debt relief is fucking based, the job creation is based, like everything is based. And for working people who have been getting squeezed for decades by both parties, Caesar would feel like an actual revolution made flesh. And that is exactly why people on our side would start looking the other way on the democracy stuff. Well, he's doing good things, so maybe the institutional erosion is a price worth paying. We've seen this logic before, and it never ends well, but I think we have to be honest that Caesar would be genuinely seductive to people who are desperate for material change. And, of course, this is just a thought experiment. It would never happen, but it is fascinating to think about, like I said earlier. And the catch, and it is a massive catch, is that you are not a voter to Caesar once he consolidates his power. You are a client. Caesar was not a public servant, he is a patron. In Rome, once you were someone's client, you owed them everything. Your loyalty, your life. He loved the people the way a general loves his army. So the moment you disagree with your patron, you are no longer under his protection. And then there is no institution left to protect you because he's already dismantled them, which, again, is why we don't like dictatorships. So, the debt gets canceled, but the democracy goes with it. Could be based to some people on the more extreme versions of the left. I'm looking at the Stalin supporters there. Anyways, the rent gets capped and the free press goes with it. That is a trade. And history has never once produced a Caesar who has handed power back voluntarily, of course. But, okay, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's get to the actual fun part. Why would the people calling for him, the Groypers, the Catholic theocracy crowd, completely lose their minds if he fucking showed up actually? Well, let's start with race. The modern concept of biological race did not exist in ancient Rome. Romans did not organize the world around white versus non-white. To a Roman, a pale blonde guy from Germany would be a filthy, uncivilized barbarian. Genuinely would be considered subhuman to them. Meanwhile, a dark-skinned North African or Syrian who spoke Latin, wore toga, and followed Roman law, that was a Roman. Caesar didn't just tolerate this, he leaned into it. He supported it to the utmost. After he conquered Gaul, modern day France, he gave the Gauls full Roman citizenship and put them in the Senate. The conservative Roman elite fucking lost their minds. These foreigners were now senators. Caesar didn't give a shit because those Gauls were now his loyal clients and they diluted the power of his political enemies. A racial purity test would have been strategically idiotic to him. You don't build an empire by shrinking it to fit a racial fantasy. So Nick Fuentes and the Groypers want Caesar to deport people and build a white ethno-state. Caesar would think he was fucking stupid. You want to throw away my most loyal new citizen to make some internet trolls feel good about themselves? He may kill Nick Fuentes in there for even suggesting something so stupid. Now there's the religion angle. Nick Fuentes wants a Catholic Caesar. He wants a Catholic theocracy. That's what he wants. Caesar died in 44 BC, so Jesus wasn't born for another 4 decades. But more importantly, Caesar was the Pontifex Maximus, the chief high priest of the state religion. He literally claimed to be descended from the goddess Venus, and after he died, the Roman state made him a god. People worship Caesar. So when Fuentes and the Groypers fantasize about Caesar's installing a Catholic theocracy and bowing to the Pope, Caesar would find that insane. He would never in a million years share his power with an institution. Christian nationalism says God sits above the ruler. Caesar says the ruler is the god. One of those worldviews ends with Nick Fuentes in a labor camp for having the audacity to tell the emperor he answers to a higher power. So, what would Caesar actually do with the Groypers if he came into existence in America now? In the destabilization phase, Caesar was not above using useful idiots. He quietly funded violent street gangs to harass conservative politicians and cause chaos. So he would let this far-right online movement run wild while the system was coming apart around them. But the second Caesar had power, those same groups would be declared enemies of the state. Julius Caesar's whole brand was Pax, aka peace or aka order. And nothing threatens that brand more than armed rogue militias who take orders from nobody and think that they're the resistance. He would turn the military on them publicly and immediately to prove to the moderate majority that, he was the only man who could restore stability. It happened to his own street gang leader, Clodius Pulcher. The second he stopped being useful, Caesar abandoned him. The Groypers would help Caesar break the American Republic, then they would be the first people he locked up and killed once it was broken. So this is just so fascinating to me that Nick Fuentes thinks that he would be like summoning his champion by having, a Caesar figure up here to run the GOP, but it wouldn't be like that. Nick Fuentes and the far right are idolizing a bisexual. And the reason they weren't subtle about this at all was because Caesar was bisexual. Like I said, publicly, openly, not a secret. The Romans had a saying about him: every woman's man and every man's woman. It was a real joke people told out loud to his face, basically, and Caesar didn't give a shit. He was completely unbothered. His affair with King Nicomedes of Bithynia, I fucking butchered that for sure, was so widely known that his own soldiers used to sing raunchy songs about it during his military victory parades. His political enemies brought it up constantly, trying to shame him, and it never worked. Not once, because Caesar did not give a shit. And it wasn't just a Caesar thing. It was a Rome thing. Romans did not have a concept of sexual orientation the way that we do today. There was no gay identity, no straight identity, no culture war about any of it. What Rome cared about was completely different. Are you strong? Are you productive? Are you a loyal citizen? Do you contribute? Great. Who you sleep with at night is your business, and nobody is going to waste time organizing a political movement around it. So imagine you drop Caesar into 2028 and you explain to him that the entire right wing of American politics is obsessed, genuinely, completely consumed with what people do in their bedrooms privately, who they love, what their gender identity is, whether two men can get married, that politicians are building entire careers out of this one issue, that they are passing laws about bathroom usage, Caesar would not be angry. He would not be scandalized hearing this. He would just be bored, deeply, profoundly bored. And he would think that they're all idiots, because why would you bother wasting your political energy on something like this? Uh, that's the hill that they choose. Who cares? So, anyways, I just thought the whole idea of it was extremely amusing, which is why I wanted to do this little thought experiment. But that is all I have for today. So, see you in the next one. Peace.